By this point, the wheels were coming off, were coming off, were coming off. By this point, the wheels sure were coming off. Boy, were they ever. Ted Turner had lost all control, lost all control, lost all control. Eric Bischoff was not a boss. Boy, things fell down. I'm John Renton with the retro review of WCW World War III, 1998. 60 men, 3 rings, 1 survivor for the final time. We got away from this fucking fiasco. Then we went to Mayhem. And in Mayhem 2000. I can't figure out with shows like this how WCW went out of business so goddamn quickly. Me, oh my, down on the Overbooked Bayou. What in the goddamn Christ happened? WCW was never the most well-managed company. They were making a lot of goddamn money. WCW at its peak was really goddamn fun. Even the last year of WCW was a madness and fueled, insanity-filled fiasco. But Jesus, this goddamn show on the latter half of 1998 events, television and pay-per-views, there were a few bright spots, but they were just going into a goddamn cavern. So, yeah, you can check out my retro review of World Championship Wrestling's World War III 1997 event, because I'm going to reference that here briefly, but then talk about the 1998 pay-per-views. And yeah, I retro-reviewed a lot of WCW stuff. Pretty much all the pay-per-views. There are probably a couple that I have missed. There have been some that I've reduxed. The bottom line is World Championship Wrestling is fun to revisit. And I remember some of this stuff. And then there were parts I wish I could have forgotten. Anyway, so they were in the Palace of Auburn Hills in Michigan. 23,000 seating capacity. They had about 17,670 fans. And, they were doing okay as far as, buy rates at this point, but they did better than they were doing better than, some pay-per-views would do in 1999. I mean, hell, by the time they got past Mayhem 99, they wouldn't ever hit 200,000 pay-per-views again. Or buys again. So 1997's event did have just a shade over 17,000 people, and they were in the Palace of Auburn Hills, and they had 205,000 pay-per-view buys. And in Mayhem in Toronto, they had about almost 14,000 fans and 200,000 pay-per-view buys. And in Mayhem 2000, they were in Milwaukee. They had 3,800 people. They had 55,000 people that bought that show. That's not just losing your, core fan base. That's pretty much having a rotten core of a fan base at that point. Nobody was buying their goddamn pay-per-views. But even then, you take a look at 1998. I mean, there was still a spark there. You had Starrcade 1997 that did 750,000 pay-per-view buys, depending on, if you take international stuff in. But it was around 700,000. So that's the most they ever did. And had they not fucked up that goddamn main event because Sting didn't have a tan, they could have done so many other good things. So, Sold Out in 98 was in Dayton, Ohio, and they had almost 5,500 people, and they had 380,000 pay-per-view buys. I believe Flair and Brett had a big match there. I think Savage and Luger were in the main event, if I recall correctly. I might be mixing those two up, but I do recall Savage being in a featured match, despite the fact that Randy's knees were just fucked. I mean, after that Halloween Havoc 97 double axe handle, look at how he landed. Look at how he landed. I am amazed he was able to walk out. Super Bowl 8, they were at the Cow Palace. They had the Sting Hogan rematch, and that was 12,620 fans and 415,000 pay-per-view buys. Now, that's pretty good. They didn't need to do another Hogan Sting rematch, at least the way they did it. Built all that up for Sting to win the title, and then Hogan screwed him over on the next night, and then they held the title up. Good job with all that build. They pissed off their fucking audience. Uncensored was in Mobile, and they had about 7,500 fans, and the same buy rate as Super Bowl 8, 415,000. That's pretty good. They had Savage. Savage, I think, was against Hogan in a cage match. Sting tried to help him, and Savage laid him out. I want to say Scott Hall took on Sting. And they were doing some good stuff, but see, Bill Goldberg was on the rise. More on Bill Goldberg here in a bit. But we then go to Spring Stampede, where Bill Goldberg, was doing his thing. Raven had won the U.S. title, and then would drop it to Bill Goldberg the next night on Nitro. But they were in Denver. They had about 7,500 fans, and they had 275,000 pay-per-view buys. So Yeah, okay, not great. Not great. I mean, you're not going to do 400,000 consistently, but whew. Slamboree was in Worcestershire, Massachusetts. They had about 11,500 fans, and they had 275,000 pay-per-view buys. That wasn't That wasn't a great show. I do recall that. Yeah, Savage's knees were shot. Savage would be gone like very soon after this because he needed like double knee surgery, and then he juiced like crazy. I love Randy, one of my all-time favorites, but God, he should not have juiced to that point. Great American Bash, 98. I believe that had Sting and the Giant for control of the tag titles. Yeah. Giant joined the NWO, or the NWO Black and White for like the 18th time. And Sting was part of the Wolfpack. Remember when Sting fought against the NWO and now he's suddenly part of the NWO and they didn't know what the fuck they were doing and Eric Bischoff is a blithering idiot? Great television performer, but god damn it. A guy that had endless resources and access to the greatest talent in the world and he couldn't run a company. God, it's a good thing no companies on TNT and TBS doing that right now. So anyway, yeah, they were in Baltimore for the Great American Bash. They had almost 13,000 fans, and they had 290,000 pay-per-view buys. Bash at the Beach in San Diego with about 10,000 people. They had DDP and noted, child protector Karl Malone, that piece of shit, that goddamn scumbag, a guy when he leaves this goddamn earth, everybody should piss on his grave. Never wanted to see his goddamn kids, and it's not even alleged. Read up on it. He did a bunch of stuff to underage girls for no reason. Not that there ever would be a reason anyway. He's a sick freak. So's John Stockton. Fuck them both. I'm glad the Jazz never won a title. Anyway, Dennis Rodman, not that he's necessarily a saint or of this earth. I guarantee you Dennis Rodman has not known what plan he's been on for at least the last 10 years. But he teamed up with Hogan, and it was a big goddamn deal. It also proved that Hogan just gave away the title to Bill Goldberg, so he could get this big match while Bill Goldberg was basically completely nerfed as far as his title run. I mean, seriously. Great moment in the Georgia Dome. Why wasn't that on pay-per-view? Because from there, he was at Bash at the Beach, I think against either Henning or Conan. I'm trying to remember which one. And then he was part of the Battle Royal at Road Wild 98. He wasn't even on the goddamn card for Fall Brawl 98. He faced DDP in pretty much Goldberg's best goddamn match, at least of his WCW run. In the main event, he wasn't even on. He was on this show, but he wasn't on the card. And then he lost the title to Kevin Nash at Starrcade 98. You had one of the hottest goddamn people that you accidentally stumbled into that really couldn't do anything except impressive shit, but he was over like God, and you fucked it up. And believe me, I'm upset with what Bill Goldberg did to Bret Hart at Starrcade 99. Inadvertent or not. Here's the kick. Good job, you dipshit. Still should have been featured better. So, yeah, they had 508,000 pay-per-view buys. They were in Sturgis for Road Wild 98. The Road Wild, Hog Wild events were shit. Still better than New Blood Rising. 8,500 fans in Sturgis, which is a pretty big crowd. I think the biggest one they had in Sturgis. And they had 365,000 pay-per-view buys, so not awful. By the way, that featured Hogan and Eric Bischoff against DDP and Jay Leno. They had Jay Leno compete in a main event. I'm actually glad that WCW went out of business because, if you're going to do that kind of bullshit, maybe you don't deserve to make endless amounts of money. Fall Brawl 98, that featured the 3-team war games. It was bullshit. They were in Winston-Salem, and they had about 11,500 fans and 275,000 pay-per-view buys. Again, really besides Saturn and Raven, and a barbed murder of a goddamn match, even as overbooked as it was, that was pretty much a lone highlight. I mean, Kidman doing that drop kick, hitting Raven, and just absolutely just causing the crowd to become unglued. It was great. Halloween Havoc at the MGM Grand. So they had 10,600 or so fans, 310,000 pay-per-view buys, down almost 100,000 from the previous year. And then they were in the MCI Center for Starrcade, 98, 1 year after setting the pay-per-view record. They had 16,000 fans thereabouts, and they had 460,000 pay-per-view buys. And that was when Nash ended the streak. Oh, the people popped. Yeah. And then how the fuck were they reacting with a finger poke of doom? Nash, you idiot. Anyway, sold out 99. Charleston, West Virginia, 10,800 fans, 330,000 pay-per-view buys. And then we basically just get to this event. Yeah, let's just get to it right now because I've ranted enough. Brief video package with names. They just chuck names. British Bulldog was named, despite the fact he was out with a back injury and would end up in the hospital. They had Chris Adams get a graphic. You know, noted abuser, Chris Adams. Deserved to get shot in the heart. Bill Goldberg arrives, but he's not wrestling tonight. Yeah, how dare you feature your champion, Bill Goldberg. Now, Bam Bam Bigelow had shown up recently, and they were teasing that stuff, and that did not really have a good payoff, admittedly. I want to say that was Super Brawl. Super Brawl 9. Not great. Shivani Heenan and Mike Tenay on commentary. Hogan, is not there. I want to say, I don't think he showed up after Halloween Havoc 98 until the week of, or I think it was either the week before, or maybe no, it was the show where he ended up doing a finger poke of doom at Nash. So anyway, yeah, he would just seriously put him in a goddamn match against Silver King. I don't know. Put him against 3 members of the LWO. They didn't mean anything. Rest in peace, Eddie. But Mean Gene was on the stage. Plugs the hotline. That was a scam. I love Mean Gene, but the hotline was a scam. And then Wrath, a.k.a. Brian Clark, took on Glacier. Glacier, that character was never good. I mean, it was cool, at first, ironically, when you saw it at 15. When he showed up, like I was, but quickly you realized it's not even the guy's fault. It just didn't work. They tried with Wrath. He was the Night Stalker. That didn't work. He was Adam Bomb. That, it's memorable, but probably for the wrong reasons. He was Wrath here, and then he became part of Chronic. And apparently he's been in a bad slasher movie recently. Good job. They went into the crowd. This was not good. I don't know why Thunder was suddenly broadcast on pay-per-view. And Glacier had developed this new thing called the Ice Pick or the Ice Spike or whatever the fuck it was. He was going to thumb him. But then Wrath hit the meltdown. 1, 2, 3. The crowd popped for everything Wrath did, so at least they were doing something right. Brett Package, he knocked Sting. Sting would not be back for a number of months. He knocked Luger for saying, oh, having big muscles doesn't mean that you're actually going to mean anything. You're not a great wrestler just because of that. Tells Benoit not to cross him. Where were you, Brett? No, that's mean. DDP is a punk. And then we go to Stevie Ray with Vincent against Conan. Who the fuck asked for this? Did Conan's promos ever make sense? Stevie Ray as a singles performer was never a good idea. Vincent ends up accidentally slapjacking Stevie. That's not a euphemism. We got a chin lock for about 20 minutes of this 6-minute match. And Conan shoves the ref and keeps fisting Stevie, and that causes a DQ. That's good. Off to a snoring start so far. So Booker then checks on Stevie, and we get more boos because the crowd's probably saying we paid premium prices back then in 98 for this. And really? And even some fans might have gotten in for a cheap price or possibly for free to pay for the goddamn house, and look what they're getting. Don't worry, things pick up after the next match because it's Ernest fucking Miller and Sonny Ono against Saturn and Kaz Hayashi. Whatever happened to Kaz Hayashi anyway? I mean, I'm not saying he was amazing, but he did some good stuff near the end of WCW, and then I don't recall seeing him on any U.S. stage after that. I assume he went back to Japan and wrestled. Shout out to Wrestling Bios for doing this blunder show on Bobby Heenan's time in WCW. He referenced the term fingers, and apparently Mike Tenay had a wife that had sticky fingers, I believe. And so he mentioned, he kind of egged Shivani a little bit with that, calling him Fingers Shivani. And it's like, he wasn't mean to be mean to Tenay, but everybody knew that about Tenay, I guess. I didn't know, but it was a cool fact. Ernest Miller was just never that good. People say he got over near the end of WCW. Yeah, they were probably just cheering ironically. Sonny Ono did manager spots and did him okay. Referee Scott Dickinson, Dickinson, I believe. This would lead him inadvertently costing Saturn the match, would lead to a feud. For whatever reason, they thought Scott Dickinson should be involved in this stuff, but it is what it is. Miller ended up kicking Saturn, and Ono fell on the cover for 3. Jericho was on WCW.com. Remember when Jericho was a bright spot in wrestling, and now he's just a blob? So Hoovy comes out with a shirt tied on the back like it's a cape. He has joined the LWO, because the idea is we're going to create another NWO for all the luchadors. Guess what didn't work? That, because bless Eddie. But you had Ray, you had Hoovy and his attitude problems. You had Damien. You had fucking El Dandy. Granted, I shouldn't doubt him. But you also had Silver King, and you had a few others in it. You had Psychosis, as one person says. It's actually Psychosis, if you pronounce names normally. But Eddie did talk about sacrifice and asked Ray if he had kids. That made me laugh, I will admit. It is also sad that Eddie would not be alive 7 years after this event took place. He would die about a week before the 7-year anniversary of this. I miss Eddie every day. I did miss this match, though, or miss seeing matches like this, because we had Kidman against Hoovy, a more heel Hoovy, over the Cruiserweight title. Kidman had beaten Hoovy, I want to say the night after Fall Brawl 98, and won the Cruiserweight title, but then we had this going, where Hoovy suddenly became the champion, but Ray didn't want to be in the LWO, but Eddie was kind of forcing him to be in there. You know, and Ray and Eddie did the best they could with some of the material they were given, but nevertheless, these two had matches for months. Kidman and Hoovy, not Ray and Eddie. They did have matches for months, but not for a few years after this. Hoovy was more heelish. The crowd was into this. I will admit some of the near falls I think were starting to piss off the crowd because it seemed like the timing was a little bit off. So this wasn't fantastic, but we did get the head scissor variation that Kidman does into ring 2. Then we got a splash for 2, and then we got Hurricanrana variation into ring 1. And we got a Hoovy driver. Hoovy decided not to cover him because Hoovy apparently is a moron. Did the 450, kind of rolled out. We got another Rana for 2. And then Ray holds on to Kidman and causes Hoovy to fall down. Shooting star press, 1, 2, 3. Once again, Cruiserweight champion Billy Kidman. Or just Kidman here. Actually, I don't remember if they were calling him Billy Kidman or not. Nevertheless, Eddie yells at Ray, "Are you in or are you out?" And then Ray says he's out, and then runs. And because he's faster, and you have fucking Silver King trying to chase after him. I don't know why. I think Silver King died recently. I don't know why I'm knocking him, but WCW is pissing me off at this point. It was around the finger poke of doom where I started taping Nitro and watching Raw. Even if Raw was taped, I was watching Raw. And then I would watch Nitro later. And I would actually just start skipping through some parts of Nitro because from 98 to 99, it was 3 hours. And then 2 hours of Thunder. I didn't even really pay attention to Pro, Worldwide, or Saturday Night because those were mostly syndicated shows, except Saturday Night was regular. But last week, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall had a stare down at one point. There were a bunch of like presidential balloons. I do remember there was some rumor that Hogan was going to announce his candidacy for president. But nobody would vote for some over 10, daughter-desiring doofus. So they would, because they hate this country. Nevertheless, Hogan torpedoed his own goddamn career and legacy recently, and has been doing that for a number of years. Rick Steiner and Scott Steiner were supposed to have a match, but then the NWO, or what was left of them, beat the shit out of Rick Steiner. Giant brought him out there. They had the NWO in a nightcap and everything. It's like he awoke with such a clatter, he sprang from his bed to see what was the matter. That's what the referee was. Who was the referee? Was it Slick Johnson? Because I felt really annoyed, so I think it was. That's a shame, because he was good in the Buff Bagwell dark side, but nevertheless. So, we get a beatdown. Here's Bill Goldberg. He stares down Scott Steiner. That woke the crowd up. They were excited for that. And then Buff Bagwell tries to hit him with a chair, and because Buff is an idiot and incapable of doing any damage except to himself, that didn't work. The NWO referee got press slammed into the ring too, which that could have ended really badly, but Bill Goldberg would never be careless with anybody. And then here's Scott Hall in the NWO, and Eric Bischoff comes out. He high-fives some fans, looks at them weirdly, and was probably drunk. Scott Hall was drunk enough for everybody else at this point. Rest in peace, Scott Hall. But Eric says it's survey time, and then he says get him, and then they beat the shit out of Scott Hall. Why? Because fuck you, that's why. Here's Kevin Nash. Clears the ring. Scott Hall does this, and Nash won't do it, and that's it. They should have never split up the Outsiders if they were going to. Should have been with the Bear storyline. The Outsiders champ was nice, though. And then Chris Jericho defended his TV championship against Bobby Duncum Jr., who sadly I think would be dead by January of 2000. 2002, or it was January or February 2000. I want to say it was a fentanyl overdose. And that's a shame. That really is. Because he was, most recently, I want to say he was like on some WCW pay-per-views and programming even into like the fall of 99. But then he was gone, and it's like, oh, okay, all right, he's going to go back to Japan. And then you read up on it, it's like, he was 34? Like, Jesus. Don't do drugs, kids. Don't do drugs. Also, don't think that Chris Jericho is beneficial to wrestling now. Heenan talks about Bobby's dad because he knew Bobby Duncan Sr. pretty well. Duncan Jr., I gotta be perfectly honest, this match wasn't good. Like, nobody really cared. They had briefly faced off on Nitro. At one point after Jericho took a pretty hard spill into the crowd, I think Jericho was pissing through a beer or a glass of something in Bobby's face, and then just took over. And I don't know if Jericho was supposed to be the heel or Jericho was just legit pissed off at Duncan Jr. Duncan hit a choke bomb for 2, but this was dragging. This was like a 13-minute match, and they had enough action for 9. So, Ralphus got involved, grabbing Duncan Jr.'s foot, a belt shot. By the way the belt shot was done, the referee practically should have been knocked out by it because they were too clustered together. And, well, let's be perfectly honest, Ralphus was never much of a worker, but bless him. Bless him, and, bless the fact that he had enough front teeth to, to basically qualify for the Alabama State Senate. But, yeah, we get a 3 count there. Jericho won. Nobody really cared. We get the 3-ring circus, a.k.a. World War III. Lots of pyro. By the way, over the top rope, out of the ring in any way, you're out. If you get pinned, you're out. If you get submitted, you're out. I can't figure out why they didn't do one of these anymore. This isn't even the main event. It's called World War III, and it's not even the main event. Like, realistically. I mean, I'm not saying, by the way, you should have done this as the main event, given how clustered that and even the main event was. But, whew, boy. So, here are some of the people. I'm not going to list all 60 people because I'm not going to be here all day. Barry Darsow, I had questioned in the 97 review if he had been the golfer yet. No, he was hole-in-one Barry Darsow. They gave Barry Darsow, Crusher Khrushchev, Demolition Smash. They gave him the Blacktop Bully was better than hole. He was a golfer. Oh, but Bischoff wanted to create a, sports-based product and realism. So let's have a wrestling golfer. Chris Adams is there. The Disciple. I think that was Beefcake's last WCW pay-per-view match. Horace Hogan. Jesus goddamn Christ. All the stars are not here. Barry Horowitz. That's a shame. Barry Horowitz was a good enhancement talent. Bobby Eaton. Rest in peace, Bobby Eaton. Nash, the clear favorite. Nash won this, by the way. The Renegade, mere months before his unfortunate passing. Scott Putski. They really thought Scott Putski was going to be something good. Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker, that guy who acted like a drill sergeant and can't even, reach something on the third shelf. Short people got no reason to live. So, Nash dumps a bunch of people. Basically, they had like a giant in each ring. I think they had Scott Hall actually in ring 2. But Scott Hall was like 6'6", 6'7". So, I guess that qualifies. But they had Giant in ring 1, and then ring 2 they had Scott Hall, and then ring 3 they had Nash. And Nash cleared out everybody in ring 3 within like 2 minutes. I mean, I didn't have my stopwatch on, but that was like one of the only good parts of this thing. The sad thing is it probably was the best of the World War III matches as far as some things that were going on. Some of the booking decisions made sense. But the Giant eventually clears out ring 1, but he was staying around a whole lot because not only was he checked out, he was really not in great shape by this point. He wasn't. He needed to be whipped into shape. We get everybody in one ring. When 20 men are left, they all get in the one ring. Miller and Saturn continue from the tag match that nobody wanted to fucking see. Nobody was asking for more Ernest Miller except Eric Bischoff because he trained Garrett Bischoff in karate. A lot of fucking good that did, Garrett. So, a bunch of people got tossed out. They went from 18 to 13 really quickly. Ending with Kidman being press slammed by the Giant over on everybody. Bam Bam Bigelow jumps in. Bless Bam Bam. Wish he had been able to get right and be okay. Security comes in, then here's Bill Goldberg. We get a pull apart, and okay, that at least woke the crowd up. And they all ganged up on the Giant. Steve Mongo McMichael was in the final 12, and bless Mongo. I feel bad for his health issues, but really? So, I think Dean and Benoit were in the final 10. They all eliminate the Giant. The remaining people there get a big pop. And then it's down to Hall, Luger, and Nash. Hall goes, Luger goes, and Nash wins. Didn't get as big of a pop as the Giant being eliminated, I'll say that. But Nash won. And then they would go on to end the streak. And then they pretty much ended the company. Because look after Super Brawl. Go and check out the buy rates after Super Brawl 9, which did better than Starrcade 98. Go check the fucking buy rates. And you tell me whether, WCW was in a tailspin or not. I'm not even talking about the cartoon, because that had an entertaining theme. DDP took on Bret Hart for the U.S. title. After DDP had won the U.S. title from Bret the night after Halloween Havoc 98, it ended because they didn't properly pace their time. Before Goldberg and DDP had even started, we get DDP winning the U.S. title. Bret took him out, beat him up, targeted his knee, targeted his ribs, all that. So DDP wanted revenge. And there were good parts to this. There was knee targeting by Bret. He did the figure four post spot. DDP tried to do a sharpshooter, which didn't work. Bless DDP. And then there was the brass knucks that aren't brass knucks, but we'll call them brass knucks. Thank you again, Wrestling Bios. That weird foreign object or international object. You can't call it a foreign object according to Ted Turner. And then but that gets misused, or that gets, put in the ref's pocket. But then DDP takes over with an awkward step spot to Bret and does his own figure four post spot. But then the referee gets knocked out when he tries to get a chair away from DDP. And then the knucks and a hit. And the NWO ref in his pajamas shows up. And then they do the sharpshooter. And oh my god, DDP is lost. Except he's not a licensed referee. I think it was Mickey J that was the other referee. Diamond Cutter, 1, 2, 3. You overbooked that for no reason. For no goddamn reason other than you could. Yep, there's the end of that. There's the end of that stuff. Yeah, I think that in 2025, if I redux any of my stuff, I'm just going to add more snark. But seeing events like this, I'm like, maybe it didn't always used to be better. Not a very good pay-per-view. And WCW, unfortunately, would just get a lot worse after this. Some bright spots, but it would just get really, really messy. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Rithlin. I'll see you soon.